Yes.
Yes. Time to start, Nicklas.
Time to start, Carsten.
Thank you all out there for joining this session. It's a pleasure to be communicating with you, Nicklas and I, and we will tell you a little bit who we are, of course, and then we will take you through a journey of a sustainable journey, we hope, focus on life cycle assessments, environmental product declarations, and things around that, we will say. Okay.
Yes. So welcome, everybody. I hope you can hear us okay. So, yeah, my name is Nicklas Gerhardsson, and I'm COO for the industry segment within Carbon Zero. I've been with the company for almost 2 years now. Have a background in partly in construction industry, also within telecoms, and have been working quite a lot with supply chain questions and improvements and so on.
What is the industry team doing?
Thank you, Carsten. The industry team in Carbon Zero, we work with manufacturing companies. Like many of you who are participating today, it's mainly for the construction industry, but we also work with other parts, other industries like the marine industry, infrastructure, transportation, and so on. But it's mainly focusing on the producing companies. So, and that's also why we're going to focus more on product LCAs and EPDs.
Super. And my name is Carsten Svensson. I've been with the company, so that is Carbon Zero and Predict, then the platform for 3 years. It's been a sustainable and progressive journey. And before that, I have some 2 decades in the construction industry, from actually a building product manufacturer side of the coin, ceilings, that is. And my role here is more or less to be out there in the market, communicating a lot with the target groups and be very active when it comes to expansion of our activities, but also markets, actually. And as part of that is also a lot of competence development. So actually bringing knowledge to the market and the different target groups. Yeah, so that is who we are, actually. I will say also at the very end of this presentation, you will have the same slide as you had before with our mails. So if you really want to, and if you have questions like from your own part, you feel free to give us a mail or contact us, or even so link up via LinkedIn or whatever. We're totally open. I think it's just good for you to know. But again, at the end, you will see the slide and you can notify our communication information. Questions and reflections, we certainly hope you have. That's fine. We think we will go through this presentation and then we take all the questions and reflections at the end. You can write them in the chat and then we'll take them afterwards. We will try to take more or less everything there live. We estimate this session will take something like 35 minutes for us presenting, and then we will just hang on as I think as long as you have any questions at the end. So that's it. Yeah.
Very good. And just to mention, also in the panel is Amy Stockwell, who is one of our senior LCA specialists. So don't be afraid to ask some tricky scientific detailed questions at the end. So, yeah, just to clarify a little bit, we are talking about Carbon Zero. You have maybe seen E&O as well, if you have been in contact with the service side of Carbon Zero. Carbon Zero is a company name, and then we have a product database project tool that Carsten will cover a little bit today. So that's a product name is Predict. And as you can see also E&O, if you look at the webpage, you will see us under E&O still. And as of December last year. We are now 100% owned by BIMobject. So we are a proud member of the BIMobject family. And that's also why we have this joint session today. Anything to add, Carsten?
No, I think that was perfect. Very good.
Great.
So let's have a look at, so what is actually then Carbon Zero doing? And we try to have an holistic approach to, the industry. We also are very eager to be the link between the industry. For instance, building product manufacturers, like many of you out there are building product manufacturers today, but also to link you, your products, your industries with the actual building and construction projects. It could be new builds or it could be refurbishment projects, you name it. So we really try to sort of be the window and facilitate for many of you with your products, with the features and the product data, actually make it available for all the target groups who work with the building projects. I will come more to that at the end also a little bit when we touch upon Prodict, the sustainability platform for products and projects. But nevertheless, we are really eager to work very close with the industry, listen to your demands, make sure that your products with all the sustainability data or technical properties tagged to them are sort of in touch with the built environment in the best possible way. So this is what is driving us, you could say, like every day, this to be the link. And we say also we have a circular business model in a sense, like we try to, everything we do, there will be a benefit somewhere else down the line. For instance, in the building process or the construction process. Yeah, that's a little bit Carbon Zero. We can turn to the next one.
Oh,
yeah. And in this session, then also we will, of course, emphasize, and it is very important for all of you out there to know the environmental footprint of your products and solutions. Could be products, could be systems, the more. And the reason is not only when you know it, you can actually do something active about it. And also, there is a whole market that is actually, they want and need this environmental footprint data and knowledge as to assure that we can go all in climate smart construction. So this is very important. And I'm quite sure that many of you out there already has had a lot of questions about, okay, the price is one thing, but what exactly is the climate impact of your products? And unless you have done your homework, it's actually really hard to answer such a request, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very clear that product data is becoming, it's more and more important. And as you say, I mean, the environmental footprint is one aspect, a very, very important aspect, but it's also about making conscious choices to be able to compare apples to apples, to have the environmental footprint of a product, but also the technical specifications, of course, so you can compare to meet the demands from a building, from a project, sort of.
Yeah, and there's we push very much for digitalization. We have to confess that the construction or property industry maybe is not in the forefront when it comes to digitization or digitalization, and it's very important because we can see a rapid change right now for a plentiful. There's like a lot of tools out there, lots of databases, lots of sharing data, and so. And you have to be on the digitalization train actually to stay in the forefront and actually be an active part of building projects. So that's roughly what we could say.
Exactly. The amount of data that needs to be presented is hard to do if you're not digital and if you haven't stored it in the right way.
And to be digital doesn't really mean like you have a PDF. You know, it's to really facilitate for the flow of data, product data. Yep. So the demands actually for building product manufacturers are changing really fast. And that's why we have this webinar also. We think we can really support here. On top of everything, we have the legal requirements. Legal requirements can be on a macro level, could be, for instance, well, could be the world. But let's be honest, let's talk about the European Union, the EU right now. We have the taxonomy, we have the Green Deal, we have Fit for 55, we have a few different initiatives. It's all being very realized at this very point of time. There's like a lot of companies that are a little bit shaky and also a little bit nervous right now because it's all coming very fast. And EU is pushing. EU wants to be in the forefront of the green transition, which is also pushing the whole market to stay on top and know about the environmental impact information. We see an amazing increase in the amount of environmental product declarations, like 150% on a yearly basis. And Nicklas, to be honest, that is on one hand, it's a very good thing. On the other hand, it could also be a challenge, of course. But nevertheless, we have a lot of things pushing the reality in the near and the far future. Yeah, we say that the environmental product declaration is today the only way that you actually present your environmental impact in an official way. But tomorrow it may change also because a lot of the legal structures actually is changing as well. We have the construction products directives, we have initiatives like the product passport, smart CE marking. We also have, of course, eco design for sustainable products and so on. So there's like a lot of different initiatives on the product level that will make it necessary to know the actual data and also to be able to share it in a good and sustainable way. So we can take
just a comment on that, Carsten. I think the result presented in a life cycle assessment or in an EPD, that's going to be valid also in the future. But the way how you present it, how you packaging, today it's an EPD, tomorrow it may change. It may be part of the CE marking or whatever. And so that's something to consider also for the future.
So what you said there is also, so make sure you actually have the data anyway, because it's going to be needed and necessary. It's just the way you actually deliver it, which could actually change. Yeah, so the demands for life cycle assessments and environmental product declarations are certainly growing. We could say like a decade back, it was like a nice thing to have. There was some early adopters, larger companies that could see that there was a clear benefit of producing and having environmental product declarations. But it was still like a niche in the market. We could say it's been also a transfer where it becomes like more a legal demand, but actually also clearly a differentiating part. I've seen down the road also a lot of companies that actually really activated in a good way, that not only that they have environmental product declarations, not only that they actually know the climate impact of their products and solutions, but also that they actively use that in the way they communicate to the market and in their sales and marketing processes. And I think it's been very nice to see. And now you could say in the near future, it's legally it's going to be a demand and more of a hygiene factor. Actually, there is so much coming with, for instance, the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, where you actually more or less look upon the sustainability or the Sustainability Reporting Directive as the way we look upon the financing reporting today. So you have to know your figures, and in the finance, as you know, do you make a loss, a gain, or what is your P&L, etc. And also with regards to sustainability, you have to know your figures. And it's coming now, coming to the bigger companies and dropping down a little bit every year. We will see change. So there is a real need for sustainability data, and it will be a must. So we could say like the market is really growing here for the least to know the climate impact of your products and then to manifest it somehow in an LCA or an EPD. Yep.
Yeah, and just to comment on this ESRD, as you said, I mean, it's a legal demand and it's going to be audited as well. And of course, it's not only going to be presenting one results, but it's also about making sure that you have an improvement plan. And that means that, especially when handling big volumes of products, it's important to know the product data as a baseline in order to start planning for improvement and reporting.
We can see the bigger companies, the revision companies are pulling up their sleeves and looking into new business for them, actually KPMG, EY, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. So let's jump into the area of product LCAs and EPDs. And just as a summary to start with, EPD, EPD stands for Environmental Product Declaration. And an EPD is it's a standardized report. It follows always a global standard. And for comparison reasons, there's also what we call a product category rule that applies to making an EPD. And the PCR, the product category rule, is there to be able to make sure that when we do an EPD project, to make sure that we are doing it in a way, following a process, so it can be compared with different products in the same category. An EPD is always publicly available. You have to publish an EPD on one of the EPD platforms that is existing today. There's a lot of different EPD platforms. We have listed 4 here at the right side. We work a lot with EPD International, the Swedish EPD system. We also work with EPD Norway, EPD Denmark, and also have some discussions with the German version. We've also had discussions with EPD Italy, for example, and so on. The important thing to say, even wherever you publish your EPD, in any of the EPD platform, it will be valid globally. So it will be recognized everywhere. But there may be reasons to, if you have a big market in Germany, you would like to publish it on the German platform. If you're selling in Norway, you would like to publish it in Norway, for example. So there are not only scientific and modeling consideration, but also it's marketing. And you touched upon it before, Carsten, that EPDs now is, even if it's not a sales document, but can be used also as a marketing vehicle. An EPD, in order to publish an EPD, it needs to be verified by an independent third-party verifier. All the verifiers that they can verify on different platforms, and they are always listed at the homepage of an EPD platform. And you can say that an EPD is a condensed version of a life cycle assessment. So when we do EPD projects, we always deliver a life cycle assessment, and then you condense it into an EPD. And that means also that a life cycle assessment and LCA report, we normally say that's an internal document. It's something that you can use. You can use it for improvements, for eco-design, for comparison of materials, etc., etc. You're free to distribute it as well, but it may contain information that you're not so willing to publish. So the EPD report, it's only presenting the results. There's no confidential information into that. An EPD report, yeah, it contains, of course, environmental data, but it's not only global warming potential and CO2 equivalents. It contains about 44 different categories or different declared points. Once you've published an EPD on a platform, it's valid for 5 years. We see a trend now that I think 90% of the published EPDs are updated within the 5-year period, even within the first year. And the reason for that, of course, is that when you do your first EPD, you will find some interesting results. You will understand your impact in a different way and identify some hotspots that you may want to work with and improve. And when doing that, you would like maybe to do an update to present and make it publicly available that you have now improved. Again, an EPD, it is a scientific document. It's not that easy to read and understand, but that's the name of the game.
It's good that you say also that many companies have actually used the outcomes of the LCA to really progressively change their own manufacturing in a more green way, or really do something which affects all the way down to the actual products and the climate impact and the circularity aspects of the products. So
exactly,
and that's a good active way of using the results of the LCA.
It is, and that's what we all are aiming for, right? To make some changes in a positive direction. Well, from a carbon zero perspective, we of course we deliver EPDs and LCAs. We do a little bit over 100 EPDs per year. It's EPDs from different markets, not only in the Nordic countries. We do EPDs for majority of countries in Europe and also in Asia. But what we do, we do not only do EPDs. There's can be many reasons for contacting us. We can do hotspot analysis if it's an early stage. You haven't really decided that an EPD is what we need to have. You can get started, do hotspot analysis, look at the big impact categories, the big impact materials, and start working with that. It can also be internal decision making, making choices from different way of production methods. It can be material choices and so on. And then we're going in closer to the EPD and LCA, because as you know, it's a fairly big investment to do an LCA, to do an EPD and publish it. So we have quite a few projects where we go in and look at, for example, a portfolio, and look into how can we do a cost-efficient grouping, because it's important for us to of course, we would like you to make the investment in an EPD, but not overspend the resources in doing very many EPDs if you don't need it. So we can do a grouping, discussion. How can we cover the majority of the portfolio with as few EPDs as possible? And then, of course, we do deliver quite a few EPDs at the end. This is an overview of a process, how to create an EPD. And it all starts at setting the scope. And this is super important because there may be different driving factors or reasons for making an EPD. So it's important to understand, do we need an EPD because we are going to hand in a quote, respond to request for quotation? It's mandatory to have an EPD. That sets a certain prerequisite on the project. It may be time critical as well. In the early phase, we also discuss, okay, what platform, what PCR, and so on is going to be used. Then we start to gather information, and this is the part that normally takes the longest time, to gather the information needed to do a life cycle assessment. After that is ready, we start modeling and do the life cycle model and look at the scenarios in that. And then, of course, assessing the result, sending it to a third-party verifier. And then it's publication. And this is a very, very high overview of the process. And you can say that, of course, if you have a simple or a simple product, few materials produced in one factory, yeah, it's going to be a shortened project, more easy to handle. If it's a more complex portfolio, several products, many factories, of course, it will take a little bit longer time to gather and model and find the right balance, you could say. And I talked about cost efficiency before. It's more cost efficient to group several products in one EPD than to do one EPD for each and every stock keeping units that you have. And that's also why we have, and we're going to discuss it a little bit today, Carsten, about Predict, where we actually take the result and distribute it out to an individual product level. But this is an overview of the process. What type of data is needed? And I said before that the data collection or data gathering is the most time-consuming part of a project. But this is basically what we need. We need information about the bill of materials. What type of material is it? Raw material. It can be subcomponent consisting of different types of material. We need information about manufacturing, the manufacturing process, how much energy is consumed, how much water, it could be diesel, it could be whatever, and how much waste is generated in this step. Then, of course, there is an installation where we look in some cases, it's very simple installations. You don't need anything more than a screwdriver. In other cases, it may require machinery, and it can require big machines and cranes and whatever. And then we have to take into consideration that phase as well. And then it's use phase. And for many of the products in the construction industry, it's installed and then it sits there for the lifetime, basically. Nothing much to do, but it still we need to look into it. And at the end, of course, what happens when the product has done its job? It can be disposal, it can be recycling schemes, etc., etc. And traditionally or normally, there is a good data availability in these parts here, and raw materials, manufacturing, installation in some cases. Then, of course, it's more and more scenario based the further you come. Also, don't forget that in between, from your suppliers to your manufacturing site, there is transportation. There may be packaging materials, there may be pallets, can be plastic, and so on. So between each and every step, we will also take into consideration the transportation method, and of course, what kind of packaging is being used, and what happens after installation. So the packaging, it be incinerated or it's recycled or whatever. And what you can say is that, I mean, I guarantee that all data is available that we need to do an LCA. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to find the data, but that's also why we work closely with our clients to help asking the right question, finding the data necessary, and also working in some cases down the supply chain with your suppliers and have meetings with them. Data, you need data for all steps here. There is a discussion on use of generic data versus specific data. And of course, you can do an EPD based on only generic data, except for when it comes to the manufacturing. That needs to be specific when it comes to energy. But sometimes in most cases, it's a benefit of finding as specific data as possible, because if you use generic data, it will be based on a data set somewhere that somebody at some point in time has decided that this material has this impact. And the only thing we know is that it's probably not going to be exactly the same material as you are using. So the more specific data we we can collect the better result or the more sharp result you will have, meaning also that it's easier when you start improvement programs to change material and so on. Then you want to work with the specific data. It says good data equals good results. It's not 100% true that if you're doing an EPD with generic data, yeah, the result can be as good as specific data. So it's not a guarantee that using specific data will give you better climate performance, but it's easier to work with.
And also you could do something about it. So if you want to reduce your climate impact in the future, you can only do that from real data, from specific data.
Yeah. But it's also about making sure to invest time in the biggest impact areas. So in some cases, in normal cases, we use specific data for the big parts, the hotspot areas, and then you can use generic data for the smaller parts that may be included, like screws and so on, in a total product.
And I presume that the customers you and we have been working with, it's a little bit of spread in the data they have from day one.
Yeah, and the important thing is to start working on something, because then you can always improve. You can always update when you have access to more relevant and more specific data. So that's great. Yeah, this is just I want to go into details. This is the different stages that is presented in a life cycle assessment and also in an EPD. It's a product stage, what we discussed, the material, the bill of materials, and so on. Then it's the assembly stage, use stage, and end of life stage. Of course, what's happening with the product when it's served its purpose. And also, always when we work, when you do an LCA, you always have a reference service life. So telling that this product will have a lifetime of about 50 years, 20 years, 10 years, whatever. And then you have a D stage or D phase here, where you can get some credits if you have special programs for recycling and recovery and so on. Yeah. We'll jump to next, just a summary. An EPD, it doesn't contain any proprietary information. It's a subset of an LCA, and it's built in that way. So it should be publicly available and present the results in a summarized way. It will contain how we have come to a conclusion, how we have calculated, and how we have built the model. But it will not contain the detailed breakdown. It will also contain descriptions of data sets and, of course, the result. This is an overview of how we work in a project, and it's very, very similar to the process I presented before. We always start with the kickoff, agreeing what's the purpose, how we're going to work. Then it's data collection, analysis, and down to verified and complete EPD. And for us, it's really important that we work closely with the client, work closely with you. We would like to make sure that of course, that we have understood your demands and your data correct and your process correct, but also to give back some competence that we have and have discussions. So normally when we run a project, we call this a standardized project, about 10 to 12 weeks. We have bi-weekly meetings with the participants in the project to make sure that we have understood everything correct. And then at the end, it's important for us that if you have invested this amount of money in an EPD, we want you to use it, to be proud of it, and being able to defend it when it comes questions and so on. So it's not something that you publish and then you forget about it. So we normally end the project with a training session. You can involve your salespeople and whatever, so that we have you feel confident in using the results. And this is probably what I talked about in the previous slides. But for us, it's really important to have a good dialogue and to not only present a document, but also something that you can continue to work with and improve your products and your processes and so on. We also do some, normally during a project, we do some competitive benchmark, having discussions. Why is it different? Why is it better? Why is it worse? And so on. Of course, being conscious of your time as well, to make this as an efficient project where we do our part and you're supporting us with collecting data and so on. We are an organization. We have three LCA specialists. It's Amy who's participating today, and it's Fanny and it's Shrikant. We have an additional LCA specialist that we're working with continuously. And as I said, we have a good experience in this. We do more than 100 EPDs per year. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Exactly. Nicklas had talked about sort of the process of realizing the LCA and EPD scenario. Now, once you have done it, please don't put it in your drawer. Please activate the results. Use insights from the life cycle assessment and create your unique sales points. There's a lot of companies that forget that. It's more like, for many, it's like being a tick box. Okay, now I have them. Okay, then they become very passive, like a passive document that you don't really activate. Tell the market that you have EPDs, and also that you actually that you know the environmental footprint of your solutions that you take to the market. Already that is a unique sales point scenario, actually. Digitize the information in the EPDs and the product data. Here, we don't only talk about like sustainability data, all kinds of data, sustainability data together with health data and technical properties, for instance. And you are, of course, always welcome to come on board the product platform, and talk a little bit about that in the next coming slides. But I would like also to emphasize that, and in my previous profession also, this is really a challenge, but don't forget to train your staff. Don't forget to train your salespeople, your marketing people, your technical support people about what does an EPD look like, what is actually inside it, how can I use it, how can I apply it in a strict correlation to your own product offer, and also take a look at your competition. How are they working with this, and can we make any wise conclusions on how to communicate the benefits regarding our products and solutions. So you must really take it to the next level as well. Really activate the results of your LCAs and EPDs. It's very, very important. Yeah,
that's when you get the return on the investment, basically.
Absolutely. And I could really it's very important to stress this. And it's also really to engage actively into climate smart and sustainable construction. Honestly, you have two products, like the two bricks here, and they look more or less exactly the same. How would you know which one is the more climate smart to use? Nicklas, which one is your favorite one?
The right.
The right. Yeah, it's actually wrong. It's the left. No, nobody would know, because products would look the same. And when they are applied also in a building, it's even harder to tell. But if you know the product data behind, that means that is when you can start to tell, is this product more optimized, for this building or whatsoever. So we can go to the next slide. So, and that is why we would like to inform you also, of course, about the platform for products and projects, Prodict. You reach it very simple. It's www.prodict.com. And by using and activating your products in Prodict, this is for construction and the property industry, of course, then You can reach specifications and actually then also activate your sales also in a way, making your data available for a lot of more actors and parties of the building process that you or maybe actually today are communicating to. You can defend your specifications also. We all know that down the line in the building process, many things can happen. In English, they love to say value engineering. So that means more or less that you change the products along the way, same, but cheaper. But when you really change a product, is it really the same product? How can you defend your specifications and your sales? Look, you're trying to take my product out, but it's actually, you're changing it to something which is not similar. It's like a product with higher climate impact or maybe worse acoustics or worse fire properties, you know. So, and also Product is a really fine platform for your own technical support as well and sales support. So not too much about Product today, but later on we will stage another webinar actually where we focus more on the platform Product. Yeah, a few words still about it because it's also quite unique in a sense that when you put your products on board Predict, actually, the data is refined and we sort of bring it into a Predict, the database. We can share the data with many stakeholders in the building process, with building distributors, with architects, with main and subcontractors, technical consultants, property developers. You could say they all use Prodict in different ways, depending on methodology and the needs they have. But you could say overall, they're all interested in to know the climate impact of the decisions they actually take regarding the building and refurbishment projects. So by bringing your data, your product, the product data into Prodict, the platform, you make it accessible also for the different actors in the building process. Yep. And you could say already today we have quite a selection of suppliers. You just see a selection of suppliers here that have put their data on board Prodict. And yeah, more than 5,000 active projects actually today. We have also many property developers that actually do their climate calculations and also climate declarations, which is a legal requirement in Sweden, but also now in Denmark and Norway. You have to perform, for instance, a climate declaration with regards to new build. And many of the property developers are having their own target values, really. They are many times ahead, actually, the legal scenario. And they have their own target groups and they push very much to utilize and apply product-specific data that they know, really, this is real data. This is not generic data. And they also want to make data-driven solutions and choices. They want to actively reduce the climate impact of their projects. And I think for many of them, Prodict is the platform to use. Yeah, I think we are coming really close to the end here now.
Yeah, and as a little summary, you've talked a little bit about Predict, Carsten, and Predict is it's a two-sided coin. You can say we talk about data generation and also about data consumption, because we have the industry with the building product manufacturers who generates the data, put the data in, but then we have in the same tool we have the facility owners, we have the architects, we have the parts in the building construction process or value chain that are actually consuming the data. And what we really want, as you touched upon, Carsten, is that to make data available at the right time, in the right format, whenever you would like to consume it, and also to try to avoid all the manual handing in of information, because everybody knows, so do you, that when you start doing a lot of manual work, yeah, it may be some mistakes, it may be some difficulties in handling that. So that's what we're doing. And today we have talked about the services about doing. So we have the Predict platform, but also these services where we do, as a consultancy service, we do the EPDs and LCAs and a lot of other environmental areas. So that's
it. And actually, to the end, I would say more about Predict in the next webinar session. We have not decided for a date, so stay tuned with us. You can stay tuned in many ways. You can, of course, follow BIM Objects social media channels, especially LinkedIn. You can follow Carbon Zero / or actually Predict is better. And then also, or stay in contact with us, live, like via email or even phoning. Even the phone works fine, Nicklas, right?
Phone works.
We talk
excellent.
to people in real life, to be honest. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's it. And here again, you have the, if you want to connect with us in person, don't be shy, it's fine. We will have a look at now. Feel free to put any chats in the chat questions if you like. We have one here. If I hire Carbon Zero to create an EPD, will the products covered by an EPD be published to the Prodict database? Not automatically. There has to be some action to have it done.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, the data required in the Prodict database is very much based on an EPD. And you don't have to do the EPDs by Carbon Zero. You can do it from everywhere you want, from any part you want, to put it into the Predict database. If you work with us, of course, there will be benefits, commercial benefits, of course, to sign up for both at the same time, and we will have all the data required in our models that will be required in the Predict database. So we really encourage everybody to make use, what you talked about, Carsten, to make use of the investment of an EPD, to present it in Predict. Then you come down to a very, very detailed product level and can be easy to consume from an architect and from a facility owner and so on. Hope that answers the question.
Okay. Any more questions? Just don't feel shy and put them in the chat.
And if not, please feel free to contact us by mail or phone. And we'll be happy to have a discussion on your specific case and challenge.
We will remain some time here and see. Oh, something came in maybe or no? Oh. Okay, I will read it. How do you see an EPD data inside models that are connected to dimension parameters? So EPD can be calculated inside the project. Have you heard any request on this? See if I understand that a little bit.
But I think this is also related to what we discussed before, if I understand the question correct. Hope we do. But in order to transfer the EPD data from the life cycle inventory data from an EPD into a project, if we consider this to be a building project, and of course then you need to get sort of the that's what we're doing in Predict. We actually move the LCI data into Predict, so you will have a life cycle stamp, if you call it, to the product in a specific dimension, and then it's up to the project or the engineers to calculate the dimension, and then you will have a result that is based on what actually you have purchased and what you have installed in the project.
Also, a reflection here, there is a difference between a product LCA and a building LCA, because you can also make a life cycle assessment out of a whole building actually.
Yep.
And this you can do also in product actually. So, but not to confuse them a little. So you have an LCA/EPD on the product specific scope. And then you also can actually do a building LCA for the whole building. And then you have to make a lot of assumptions, of course, for that building project.
Yep.
That could be very specific. Yeah, we have another one here also, but I see also that Amy is activated. We have a large product range and we can't prioritize to do EPDs for everything. How should we approach it? Yeah, I bet you have gotten this question many times.
Yeah, it's a challenging question. I mean, first of all, I think there's two ways you can look into the portfolio, and we can of course help you with doing that. Normally there's smart grouping where you can divide the portfolio in certain chunks or certain portfolio parts, and then you do an EPD, and by doing that you can come down from a very, very big number of EPDs to a smaller one. But generally, when we talk to we get this type of question, I think it's also very much a business approach, and we recommend. I mean, if you want to start somewhere, start with the high runners, the big sellers, and then you can work from there. At least you will have a good knowledge of what you are selling the most. So it's a combination of doing smart grouping, but also of course the business perspective, because you want to do you really you want to have a return on investment on this one.
I say usually many times there's an 80-20 scenario. So 80% of what you sell actually from 20% of the products. So I would start with these. That's many times it's like that, although I don't know, Amy, if you have any reflections here regarding this as well in your interaction with customers.
Whenever we're doing EPDs, we can only give one set of results per EPD, but there are some very clever ways of grouping things together. And actually this answers both the second two questions. Sometimes you can group things together, say by weight. So you just report per kilogram of a product, or per meter cubed, or per meter, or whatever makes sense, rather than doing per piece. And then, to answer the second question, if you're doing it per kilogram and product X is 6 kilograms, then you just multiply the impact by 6. And that's a good way often of grouping products together if you've got a huge range of EPDs. Again, as Nicklas said, it's a business decision, so you group them together in a way that makes sense for business reasons. And if you can report it per kilogram, you might have to give the worst impact per weight, but usually that works quite well.
I also have one reflection regarding then if you decide to put your data into product platform, because then sometimes the results from the EPDs, even if it's like products in the same product group, can be reported in different ways: cubic meters, square meters, running meters, whatever. The work we do in product as to facilitate for the users is that we, even if it's a so-called a family EPD, so it's a cluster of products, we actually calculate it down to that specific product. So exactly the climate impact of that ceiling, that door, or whatever it is. Secondly, we also transfer into a functional unit, which is the same for that product group. So you can start to compare apples with apples. So that's the reflection. Yeah. We'll see if any more questions comes in.
I think that's.
It seems that not so many more questions. Maybe Nicklas and Amy, everything was like crystal clear, or maybe we have some people connecting with us afterwards. And as I say, stay tuned then regarding the other webinar, which is more focusing on Predict the platform. Follow us. Feel free to follow BIMobject Eando and or Predict's LinkedIn channels also. We usually put most of the information there.